Hello and welcome to this Food and Drink Tech Hub webinar on artificial intelligence in the food and drink sector called AI on the Menu, the future of food and drink technology. My name is Alistair Trail and I am a Principal Food and Enterprise Consultant for SAC Consulting, and we are delivering the Food and Drink Tech Hub networking section for Highlands and Islands Enterprise. So the Food and Drink Tech Hub project provides business support, technical advice and events to develop the existing and growing network of food and drink businesses, manufacturers and supply chain businesses in the Highland Council areas. So please ask you to put your cameras off and switch your microphones on mute. And if you have any questions at the end of the session, please just put your hands up and switch your cameras on and we'll take questions there. So today's webinar is on artificial intelligence and applications of AI in the food and drink sector. We have three fantastic speakers that are going to talk today about artificial intelligence, give you an introduction to what actually artificial intelligence is, both from Gen AI and more traditional machine learning applications, and how this can be applied in the food and drink sector. So really going to include things like a summary of where to use AI and where it's most beneficial, an overview of some of the risks and some of the pitfalls of AI, how your business can go about using AI, and then some case studies on how food and drink businesses have been using AI to support their business. So this is the agenda. So first, Claire Monroe from HI is going to give an introduction to the Tech Hub and some of the new strands that will be implemented as part of the project. Then I will talk about the strand I'm involved in, which is the Food and Drink Tech Hub networks. And then we'll pass on to our speakers. So we'll have Sarah Balsam and Matthew Clark for RSM UK, talking about introduction to AI and its applications in the food and drink industry. And then Lucy Wagar, who is a food and drink consultant, who's going to talk about AI food and drink case studies. And then we will finish hopefully at 5 o'clock. So I will now pass on to Claire Monroe from HI, who's going to give a brief introduction to the Tech Hub.
So thank you. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the wider support that Highlands and Islands Enterprise has made available for food and drink businesses through our Food and Drink Tech Hub programme. Some of you may have seen some social media posts going out recently. The background to this is HI contracted with SAC Consulting and led by Alistair have been delivering the business support services for the last 2.5 or so years, and we also had a plan to produce a physical capital building where businesses could come and access support and demonstrations of new technology with the view to them developing new products and processes. However, for one reason or another, mainly due to the economic challenges that have been recently, we could not really make a business case to create that facility, and we didn't really have the intelligence or the evidence of demand to make that business case stack up. So instead, we have developed a programme of wider support for food and drink businesses and supply chain in the Highland Council area, which is funded primarily by the Inverness and Highland City Region deal. However, some of you joining the webinar today may not be based in the Highland Council area, because we can actually make our webinars and online support available to the wider Highlands and Islands Enterprise region, just in case you're worried. But the other support I'm going to speak to you today is primarily targeted at Highland Council area. Could you pop on the next slide, please? Thank you very much. So as I mentioned, this programme is for Highland Council area only, and it's for small to medium-sized enterprises, which are enterprises of 250 employees or fewer, with a certain threshold of turnover. You can find out more information on the website, and we'll give you the link later on. I'm sure Alistair will be circulating the slides after the webinar also. So it's targeted at food and drink producers, manufacturers, and supply chain businesses, so businesses that are operating in a direct supply chain upwards or downwards, such as a supply of primary produce, packaging, logistics, and other supply chain activities. And the programme is designed for those businesses to increase productivity, improve efficiencies, and reduce their carbon emissions, and through a variety of activities such as expert advice and access to funding via grants, and also the events and networking that Alistair's strand, the network strand, provides. And all of the support is available now and will be available until the end of the financial year 25-26, when the programme will be coming to an end, along with the rest of the Northern Innovation Hub. So if you could pop the next slide on, please, Alistair, thank you. It just very quickly gives you an overview of the 5 strands that we have available through this programme. You'll see to the left-hand side the TechHUB network, which is all the one-to-many activities that are provided through Alistair and his team. So that's the webinars and face-to-face in-person events. We also have the opportunity for learning journeys and communities of interest groups. And SAC Consulting can also provide you with one-to-one support to help you develop a specific, either solve a specific problem or develop a product. Lots more information available. And then if we go round the circle, we then have a net zero mobilisation programme, which is a programme of up to 12 months that can support food and drink producers and manufacturers to reduce their carbon footprint and develop a net zero plan. It involves carbon baselining and accounting, and will give you the support, training and skills that you need to fully integrate with net zero, and obviously save your company money by reducing your emissions and becoming more efficient. And all of this, again, will be available through the website, so we'll give you the link. Then we also have, going round the circle again, a technology advice programme, which allows you to access up to 10 days of specialist technology advice. That's free of charge to the business, and you can apply for that now. It would, if you were successful, you would be referred to our external consultants, Intelligence Consulting, who would work with you to look at your issues and what you're trying to do with the use of technology, and develop a technology adoption plan for your use. And that will help you understand what costs would be involved in implementing the new technology, and some of the risks and challenges, and the benefits that would give to your business through the adoption of new technology. And then finally, we have our grants programme, which involve 2 individual types of grant. So with your technology adoption plan or your net zero plan that you could get through these other 2 strands, you can come to us and apply for a grant towards the implementation of the changes that you would need to make to provide the benefits. So you can apply for capital grant funding of normally up to 40% of the total cost of the technology, or in some cases 50%, depending on where you are based and the status of your business. And you can also apply to us for training grants that would support up to 70% of the costs of training the workforce in order to use and manage the new technology that you are looking to implement. So that is really a very quick overview of what is available to the businesses through this programme. And there's a final slide, Alistair, if you could pop that on, thank you very much. So the application process involves filling out some details in an online web form, inquiry web form, which you will find again via the link on the TechHUB webpage. Give us as much information as you can in answering these questions, and then your initial application will be assessed internally by Highlands and Islands Enterprise, and we will agree which strand we will refer you to, and then once that's all been agreed, you'll be invited to make a full application to Highlands and Islands Enterprise. And I should just say at this point, there's no kind of initial entry point. If you have the information you need that you think you need to apply straight for a grant, you would be able to do that. I am working with HI to make sure that all that information is in place. But equally, you could access the Net Zero programme and the specialist advice and apply for a grant, and also obviously benefit from all the other support that Alistair and his team provide. And one last thing I'd like to say now, going back to the Net Zero mobilisation programme, because that's a year-long programme, and we're looking for applications by the 13th of December. So get them in quick. And all of this is subject to funding. So the earlier you come to us, the better chance you have of benefiting from the support. So I don't know if anyone has any questions or you wanted to give time for questions, Alistair, but I'm very happy if you want to get in touch with us to find out more, or we can wait till the end if you've got any questions that you want to ask us. Is that okay?
That's perfect. Thank you very much. Yeah, if you have any questions, we'll maybe grab them at the end. So thank you. So just before we introduce the first speakers on the topic of AI, I just want to very quickly tell you a little bit about the Food and Drink TechHUB network section that we deliver at SEC Consulting. As Claire said, it's a 3-year with a 4th-year project to work with 300 food and drink businesses in the Highland Council area. And we started in summer 2022, focusing on opportunities for technology adoption, innovation related to food and drink production. And there's 3 real areas there that we're focusing on. It's trying to help businesses develop their growth plans and broker specialist technical support, trying to raise awareness of new technologies, and trying to develop collaborations between the public and private sector to try and grow the food and drink sector in the Highlands. As I say, we've been going for approximately 2.5 years, and these are the areas that really we support businesses. Things from product development work, from packaging and labelling, food safety. We do a lot of work on net zero sustainability and waste management. We do a lot of support in branding, marketing, business planning, and some more technical stuff to do with equipment specification, technical troubleshooting, factory layout. That's the website there if you want to get some more information about this and all the other strands of support that's available. And we also have our podcast, which is called Food and Drink Business Bites, and some of our other workshops and webinars and recordings there you can get on the website. But this is how our how we deliver our support. So if we get an inquiry from Claire and from HI through the website, then we'll give you a support call and signposting service where we can find out a bit more about your business and how this project can support you going forward. We do lots of workshops, be that technical workshops or face-to-face networking workshops, and we also do these 1-hour technical webinars, and we also do insights and best practice through our videos and our podcasts. And on the right-hand side is our 4 main outputs of what we deliver. So these are innovation clinics where you can talk to a panel of experts in a different area and get some really bespoke advice. We have common interest groups where businesses in the same subsector or the same geographical area or have the same challenge get together to try and overcome these challenges. We've got 5 common interest groups at the moment, and we're just started one on for the brewing sector. We have intensive one-to-one support where you can work with an expert for 3 days and they will help you overcome a particular challenge. And we also have our learning journeys to visit businesses, visit areas that have best practice so they can share that with you. So that is the TechHUB. So I just now want to pass on to our first speaker, which is Sarah and Matthew from RSM UK, who will introduce us to AI. So I will stop sharing my screen and ask you guys to go ahead.
Brilliant. Thank you, Alistair. Yeah, thank you to you and Claire for the introduction there. Let me just get my screen shared. Is that showing up for everyone? Perfect. Thank you. Lovely. Brilliant. Okay, so brilliant. So just quickly to introduce myself and to introduce Sarah as well. My name is Matthew Clark, Associate Director in our consulting division at RSM. RSM is a provider of audit, tax and consulting services to middle market businesses. We do have offices throughout the UK, including one up on Shetland Islands. And also obviously joining me today is Sarah Belsham, who heads up our analytics, data analytics and insights consulting practice. So we'll give you a little bit of a whistle-stop tour of AI today, I think. We'll be quite quick as a little bit of an introduction and setting up a few areas where we think, sort of ways that you can try and get involved with AI. And I think then obviously we'll hand off to Lucy, who's going to go into a bit more detail. But we're just going to start here really with why should businesses be starting to explore AI? Why is it relevant generally? I think one thing that we're seeing really throughout the middle market sector for businesses is that they are still very much, despite the current economic climate, they are very much still increasing their investment in digital. They often may be starting from a very low base, but it's still really seen as a key strategic investment area. It's all about obviously trying to increase revenue and profitability and just generally improving process efficiency, but also about sort of quality of life enhancements for people working through business, so the staff that are working for those businesses. We also find that organisations often take on sort of targeted individual digital projects, but they really lack that kind of larger digital strategy for bringing it all together. And that particularly can include the sort of digital skills that end up being a real limiting factor in how the AI or just general kind of analytics outcomes, how they actually impact businesses. I think it's kind of worth mentioning that the reason for doing a lot of this is really the world we're moving into is starting to really be about it's really about making better decisions for your business. There's kind of sort of three strands to this. This idea of decision support, which really is things like dashboards and just making sure that you have the right information for going out to make the right decisions for your business. This idea of decision augmentation is this idea of having not just the data to help support you make decisions, but perhaps having AI suggest those decisions for you, taking advantage of analytics, of machine learning, to start suggesting what the right outcome is for your decisions. It's still relying on the human to accept or to reject or to actually make that final decision, but it's giving you a lot more insight into the direction you perhaps should be looking to move to. And then all the way through to this idea of sort of fully automated decisions as well. I think at the moment we're seeing a move really from those businesses that are really leading this sector. It's a real move from just decision support. So from this idea of moving from dashboards, moving on to this idea of augmented decisions. So decisions being supported by, machine learning and analytics. And really that's to say that if you're not yet at the stage where you have kind of good analytics dashboards that you can, you've got good data that you can make your decisions off of, that probably worth thinking you are starting to drop a little bit behind there. That was futuristic maybe 20 years ago. And now, as I say, the futuristic part of this is using, AI and other elements to help you kind of augment those decisions you're making. But I suppose we should say here really, what are we talking about when we talk about AI? I think traditionally there was the more traditional side of AI is what we now kind of think of as machine learning. That could be around the idea of predictive analytics. It could be this idea of classifying customers, classifying data into sections for you, and using machine learning to analyze that data and to put all that data into different buckets for you. The more modern and what's taken all the hype in the last couple of years is this idea of generative AI. So things like ChatGPT, things like Microsoft Copilot. And that's become really good at helping people to do research, helping to kind of start creating content or enhance content you have, but also to extract data from large amounts of text and to kind of create summaries, or probably, as a lot of people have used it for, to create poems out of emails that they have. It's worth sort of mentioning as well that this automation, although separate to AI, automation is really starting to creep in with AI. This idea in the future that we will be automating more processes because we have this not quite intelligent, but we have this AI that's sitting there helping to kind of make those decisions, to predict things for us, and that's going to start allowing people to kind of automate more of those processes. So it's kind of easy to think of that more traditional AI, sort of around predictions or classifications. That's often kind of referred to as machine learning. And then what people are now often talking about when they talk about AI is things like ChatGPT, Copilot, that kind of generative AI that's become really quite in vogue in the last couple of years anyway. I think just some examples of where AI is kind of fitting in that hopefully will be that will resonate with some of you here, just to give you an idea of where those different AIs can be used. I think something that we're seeing quite often is this idea of content generation. I think one area we're going to start seeing this more is, particularly with smaller businesses, using Gen AI to help with marketing content. You can sit there with ChatGPT and create a fairly decent marketing plan. You can sit there and it'll help you write copy. You can even use it to design visuals. And some of these things are still not quite up to scratch yet, but they are getting better all the time. I think that's an area that we're going to start seeing used a lot more. Can that help you, do smaller elements of marketing without having to go to an external supplier, for example? I think the area that's not really being discussed in this at the moment is if you start using Gen AI to replace humans in a creative design process, I don't think we've really kind of considered what the larger public reaction to that will be. You can think of now, you can go out somewhere and buy something that says it was handmade. I'm not sure we're far away from seeing businesses that will say things like, we are proudly Gen AI free, for example, in the creative sector. Something where I think that we are starting to see Gen AI used really quite positively is around the idea of sort of chatbots and search engines. I think, for example, we've all kind of used those kind of internal chatbots previously, where effectively they're working off of keywords. So if you type in annual leave, it might pick that up and might return to you some policy documents about annual leave. But that might not be directly what your question was really about. And what's really changed now is the ability of generative AI to understand those documents and actually give you an answer that fits, with what your question was, rather than just regurgitating a particular document that happens to be linked to a keyword. I don't think we're too far away from that really starting to take over from that first line support function, and actually just meaning that you possibly need the support agents that you maybe have, the people that actually deal with your client queries are only there to deal with more complex queries, rather than kind of some of the more basic day-to-day things that actually I think generative AI will be able to take over in not too much time. We're also finding it's very useful, and this is something that we're actively seeing a lot of companies use now, is around it using to help speed up internal search engines, helping you to surface documents across your business, and really helping to kind of speed up that process of sharing your knowledge around the business as well. Generative AI is much better at searching through those documents to find the information you need from your prompts, rather than you having to rely on opening every document and searching for all of them yourselves. And I think that really relies on you having your data stored correctly, stored safely, making sure that people can only see the documents that they should be seeing. But if you're in a place like that, you can really help sort of speed up the amount of time you spend doing something rather than the amount of time you spend searching through data. I think probably the idea of predictive analytics is probably quite well known for helping you predict things like sales and helping you plan budgets better for the future. But I think it's worth noting there are other ways that the sort of machine learning and sort of that predictive analytics layer can be used as well. Tying in customer segmentation with spatial analytics could really help you understand if you're opening a new store or you're deploying a new product into a particular retail location. It can really help to kind of help you understand what your sales might look like in that area, much more accurately than perhaps you would have been able to previously. And the final point on here, really, this as we've talked on the previous idea about the decision augmentation, I think particularly within supply chains and logistics, we're really starting to see the rise of things like decision intelligence platforms. Effectively, they will analyze the decisions you've made previously, where you've allocated stock, how that's helped sales, and they will actually, they can sit there and they can start to plan out, actually, this is how we should be moving stock around, this is where you should be holding it. And they can make that decision at 3 o'clock in the morning when you don't have staff on shift. That means that the stock is already there the next day, and you're not then having to get someone to come in at 9 o'clock, analyze it and shift that stock out the next day. That's something that we're definitely starting to see sort of enter the, like I say, the supply chain and logistics marketplaces now. With that, though, I'm going to hand across to Sarah, who is going to talk a little bit more about how you can get started with AI. Yes, I'll leave that there for you, Sarah.
Thank you, Matt. Good afternoon, everyone. I think Matt's probably just whet your appetite a little bit there with some of the things you can do with AI. But actually, how do you get started? It is a question that we are covering with a lot of companies, a lot of our clients. And I think the key thing to keep in mind, actually, with any technology solution that you're thinking of deploying, this doesn't only link into AI, is how does it link to your business strategy, and what are the goals that you're trying to achieve as an organization? And those goals might be linked to improving efficiencies, reducing costs, maybe moving into a different market, or starting to explore selling different product lines. Those business goals will drive the decisions you make around where you want to invest in technology. And so when it comes to AI, it's really important that you first of all identify and prioritize concrete use cases. I've had clients come to me and say, we want to start using AI, but they haven't really got a reason for using AI. And that's not good enough. That's not going to give you the business value. You're not going to get a return on investment without having that clear-cut use case to deploy. Once you've got a use case, then there are other things that need to be considered. Those link into, obviously, your technology. There's lots of different ways that you can deploy AI within your organization. So you need to think about what's the right technology for you. How does it fit with your overall IT and digital strategy? Are you looking for a partner? So somebody who's got, maybe an AI platform that you can use with your own data, or are you looking for something more sophisticated where you might actually build your own solution? And those decisions need to be taken in consideration with your internal capabilities and what's right for you as part of that overall IT strategy. I think one of the most important things in relation to deploying AI, and this is a little bit different to other technology solutions, is that AI requires a huge amount of data, and data of really good quality. And so if you're thinking about AI solutions, you're looking at those use cases that you've identified. To one of the points that Matt just made around surfacing knowledge, well, that knowledge needs to exist within your data, and you need to be comfortable that it's correct. So if you've got lots of documents, but you're not really sure if they've been kept up to date, you're not sure if they're actually accurate anymore, those are not good data sets to use to power your AI solution. Similarly, if you're looking at predictive analytics, you've got to have good quality historical data on which the trends looking forward can be based. So your use cases, your technology, your data are really important as inputs into how to get started with AI. It's also very important to have the right governance in place. Think about the risks, think about the benefits, of course, but also what are the risks associated with your AI. And particularly given that there are a lot of quite accessible tools out there now in the public domain. So Matt mentioned ChatGPT. Have you got policies in place that tell your people what they can and can't do with publicly available large language models like ChatGPT? Are they permitted to use them in connection with business data, with client data? Make sure you've at least thought about those things and put something on paper that can be implemented and published so that you're mitigating the risk of unauthorized AI. And possibly most important, I've said that about data, flip-flop between data and people. AI is a super powerful technology, but it's going to be used by a person. It's going to be used hand in hand with the people in your organization. It's not designed to replace people. It's designed, as Matt was saying, to augment and to support. And so we really need to be thinking about how the machine and the people can work together. And to get the most out of your AI solutions, you need to make sure that people understand what the AI might be designed for, that there's a good communication and adoption plan in place, and that the right training is made available, even if it's for things like using prompts and how to effectively prompt a generative AI engine to get the best possible response. Those are quite basic upskilling techniques that you can start to think about. And so for all of those things, you really should be thinking about pulling those together into an AI strategy so that you've made some business decisions up front as to how you want to approach the implementation of AI within your organization. You must have a governance layer, and I'll come on to that in a little bit more detail in a moment, that really drives the responsible principles of using AI, and that you've got policies and procedures in place. I think if we pop onto the next slide, Matt, I think that we'll just have a little bit of a look at what we mean by responsible AI principles, because AI has really kind of hit us by storm, really, in the last couple of years, with the launch of things like ChatGPT and generative AI becoming much more readily available for the masses. You don't need to have a data scientist to be able to make use of a generative AI tool. And so therefore, AI has become more accessible, and therefore there are more risks and more considerations for how that AI is being used. So some of the things that you must be considering in relation to data privacy. Actually, are you authorized to use the data that you want to power your AI? And that has to link into the existing GDPR and other regulations, but make sure that you know exactly what data is going through an AI solution, and that it is that you are authorized to use it. Similarly, you've got to have an eye on safety and security. AI is very powerful, and there are AI systems out there that people are looking to hack into. There's a lot of data going through those AI systems, so they're a target. So you've got to make sure you've got the right cyber controls in place, that if you're partnering with a vendor, that they've got the right level of assurance and security to make sure that any data is completely secure. And then you've got the areas of ethics and explainability. And really one of the key things in relation to responsible AI is it must be free from harm, it must be free from bias, it must be fair, and you must be able to explain it. And one of the things that I often say to people is, if you're not able to produce or run the same kind of logic manually that you are looking for your AI to do, and be able to explain each step of the process and to be able to do it as a human, then you probably shouldn't be developing an AI solution, because you haven't got enough control over what it's doing. So you've got to be able to explain all of the inputs, all of the logic, and all of the outputs, so that if somebody says, how did your AI come to that decision, you absolutely know how it came to that decision. And that links into the accountability. AI solutions are not standalone. They're part of a business process. And so there must be somebody in your department who is responsible for the use of that AI and for constantly checking that the outcomes of the AI are as expected, can be explained, are free from harm and bias, and that your AI is responsible. Just a couple of takeaways before we hand over to, I think it's Lucy. It's a really exciting time. AI it's here to stay. It's going to evolve. We're going to see it increasingly being introduced to complement and enhance business processes. But you've got to think about, where are you going to use it? So have those use cases, have a vision and a plan. Make sure you've got the data that is needed to drive a use case. And I would say probably one of the most important takeaways is start small. So don't pick the most complex use case that your teams have come up with. Find something that's pretty tangible, that you can bring value but isn't too complex or too risky, and start to build up some confidence. Let your people build up confidence. So develop their skills in line with, starting small and building momentum. And do make sure that you've got policies and guardrails in place.
Yeah, we can. Thank you.
Great, perfect. Hi, everybody. So I thought I would start with a bit of a brief introduction to me and my background. And I feel totally unqualified to talk about this. Now, Sarah has spoken, because I feel like they are the experts in AI. But I think my role today is to illustrate how I have been utilising AI probably over the last couple of years, and definitely more so in the last year, to share with you some really practical ways that AI is being used. So very quick background on me and what I do. So I am a food industry consultant, specifically within product development. I have always worked in the food industry within manufacturing and retail environments. I also launched my startup business called Podology in 2012, which is a first to market free from chilled dessert business. And after that business closed, I started as a consultant really by accident. People approached me to work with them, which was fantastic. And I've been doing that ever since. And I AI as a consultant, some of the things that Sarah was mentioning about the risks and making sure you have policies in, it's obviously much easier to use AI when you are working for yourself, because you can put those guardrails in on your own, which has enabled me to start using it much more quickly than within slightly bigger businesses. So that is a very quick rundown on what I do. I tend to now I work with businesses of all sizes. I have a specialised specialism with startups because of my startup experience. But equally, because of my background working in retail and bigger manufacturers, I also go into bigger businesses and run training programs. And I also, my biggest client is actually a big retailer. The other thing that I do is a podcast called Oh for Food's Sake, which I run with a colleague of mine that I met when I was a graduate. And we basically share our experiences of working in the food industry, the highs and lows, the challenges of working in the industry. And within that, we've also talked about AI, how we use it. And we also talked about the case study that I'm going to talk about too, and had that research business on. So extra resource there if you want to learn a bit more about it. So what I wanted to do today is talk about how my experience of using AI in the food industry. So I'm going to cover how I use AI in my day-to-day, which is very, very much focused around ChatGPT, but I thought it'd be useful to hear all the different ways, or some of the different ways that I use ChatGPT in particular. I'm then going to talk about how a project that I worked on with a client of mine, and we used a market research company called Grounded Research, and we used AI for a big part of the research. And I thought that would be really useful to understand how we use that, some of my initial misconceptions about using AI and how that worked in practice from a market research perspective. And I also wanted to share a couple of things that I've heard about fairly recently, which I see as really innovative in the industry and really changing the way that things could be done with where AI is being utilised. So my everyday, sorry, this is a really busy slide, but I use ChatGPT quite a lot in my day-to-day, and I use it for a variety of different things. So in the previous talk, someone was talking about content generation, and for the podcast that we do, we will have we basically taught it what we've done so far with our podcast. So we're able to input transcripts from our previous episodes, so it starts to learn our tone of voice, but also learns about the topics that we cover and our world of the podcast. So we utilize it to ask it questions about, based on the topics that we've covered before, what other topics could we cover. And I think one of the things that I hadn't appreciated when I first started using ChatGPT is how it can learn your tone of voice, the topics that you're interested in, and you can quite quickly guide it into understanding what you want to get out of it. And that's about learning the different prompts and things that Sarah was talking about. And the more you use it, the better it becomes in that way. I think one of the big things for me is also understanding the shortcomings of something like ChatGPT. So you know when, as a human, you need to come in and check things and make sure actually that it does make sense and it is relevant. And there's definitely a lot of remembering that this is a piece of I was going to say software, that's probably completely the wrong terminology, but it's not a human, and it still does need to be guided by you. One of the things that I've started using it for quite a lot is translations. So where I've had for example, product specifications, I was struggling because I couldn't find specification in English. And I was actually struggling to find it within this database. So I thought, hang on a minute, ChatGPT can help me with this. And I used it very quickly for translations. And I know we've had Google Translate, but there's a depth to what you can do with ChatGPT that you can't do with Google Translate. There's also ways of using it where Amy and I, who I do my podcast with, we run training sessions, and it can cut down time that we spend coming up. And this is when I say this, it does kind of take the fun out of something. Because, for example, I've got on here quiz generator, because when you're putting a presentation together for a training session, what I've also found it useful for is having like a conversation with it to come up with interesting ways of keeping an audience engaged. So I will ask it, I'll tell it, I'm presenting this topic and I want to keep the audience engaged. What types, what kind of games could we do that are appropriate for this? And then it will come up with lots of ideas. And that I think is really valuable, because because I'm a consultant and sometimes I can work on my own quite a lot, or just me and Amy, it can also be somebody else to bounce ideas off, which, especially when you're working from home, even if you're in a big company, that can be really, really helpful. I think I've put on here about thought starters is another good way of utilizing that same kind of interaction. And I know, and obviously, I'm saying obviously, you can also now speak and it will speak back to you. And I was talking to someone who is a lot younger than me. So she was 25, she's 25, and she was talking about how she, chats to her Snapchat AI like it's a person to get advice. And that was a real moment for me, because that shows the transition that we're going through as a society, because the younger generation, it is very much becoming part of their day-to-day, whereas I'm sort of learning to do this with work. It hasn't encroached into my personal life so much. On that side of it as well, where one of the things that we do in our training is about a soft skill of not using so many qualifying statements. So in an email, you might say, oh, I just thought I'd contact you to do this, that, or the other. Another way I found it really useful is if you're preparing an important document, or there's an email that you need to get a specific piece of information across in a really professional way, or you want to be more assertive than you are naturally. I also use ChatGPT to type in, quite quickly what I want to say, and then ask it to reword it in a more assertive manner. Again, that's where you need to see the shortcomings in ChatGPT and make sure that when you send the email, it is in your tone of voice and sounds like you. But I do find it really useful to reword very quickly, whereas previously it would have taken you a long time. Another one that I wanted to tell you about was about calculations. Now, it can do, you can ask it to do anything, but the specific way that I use it, which I have found really useful from a food industry perspective, is things like checking nutritionals on artworks and recalculating specific things. So, for example, I don't know if anybody on here is checks artworks and that kind of thing, but where you've got, if you're checking, a number of artworks, and you need to just get through it quite quickly. I've used it where I have copied and pasted the nutritional information into ChatGPT, told it what I need to do, and then asked it to check that it's accurate by calculating the proteins, carbs, and everything to calculate the energy total. And that speeds up the process so quickly. And again, you have to quality check it by making sure that actually it makes sense. So you can't completely switch your brain off. But I have found it in tasks that are quite mundane and that you, as a human, can make errors because you start to switch off. It can just help you get through things quicker, and you can still check it. So I found that really, really useful. Another way I've used it from a calculations perspective is I've been doing some work on micronutrients with dehydrated product. So I've told it the calculations that I want it to do. and then I've put in lots of different ingredients with at their value at their where their moisture content is, say, at 90%, and I've told it I want you to tell me what the micronutrient content is at a much lower moisture content, and again that saved me a lot of time. I'm just trying to think if there's any ones on here that I haven't. So basic trends and recommendations, that's basically asking it to go across. And the one thing I wanted to say about this is there are also businesses. So there's a company called TasteWise that from a trends perspective is incredible, but very, very costly. But there are ChatGPT ways of asking it, can you tell me what the most popular search term was within bakery? But these companies are taking that a step further and giving you incredible insights, but it's at a massive cost. But there are ways of doing it to stop you trawling through lots and lots of information. So there's some of the key ways that I'm using ChatGPT in my day-to-day. Then I wanted to talk to you about this market research piece of work that I did with Grounded Research. So first of all, to talk about the traditional model of insights for MPD, it's great, and it has served us very, very well. But what it does is it gives you this insight into consumers' thoughts in that moment of time. So you're in a room with them, and this is talking about quality data. So you're in a room with the consumers, and they're tasting the product that you're supplying to them, and they're giving you their thoughts, and you're writing notes, and you're taking on their feedback. And then, if you're using a market research company, you would get a big report back with all of the insights from all of the consumers, which is great. You get a lot of data, and you get a lot of words and a lot of information, but there is only so much information in that way that our brains can assimilate. Those kinds of research, market research things, are very expensive generally, so they're not that accessible for startup businesses or businesses on a low budget. So you have to be careful about what you put through consumer testing, and the accessibility isn't always brilliant, and you're reliant on the people that are going to those consumer insights or that can get your samples. So how AI can help with market research is it can bring a story to life in a more realistic way. You get much more of the customer voice, and you can free up quite a lot of time. And I'll go through the detail of how we did this. And it definitely improves accuracy, speed, that you can assimilate a lot of information from more consumers, and you can do it quite quickly. Now, I will say that when Grounded Research, I went to Grounded Research because I know Claire. We've been talking about doing some work together, and she said, "Why don't we do this using AI?" And my initial reaction was, "I don't think we'll have the budget to do it, and we need it quickly." And she said, "It's actually cheaper," which really shocked me. And the other benefit is that it really humanizes the insight that you get, because you're allowing the consumer to do something much more in their own time and at home in a way that they would be doing it in real life, rather than sort of being in a false environment, which also means that you can really engage with them, and it's a lot more interactive, which seems counterintuitive, but basically I'm going to talk through how we did that with Oddbox. So Oddbox were a client of mine that we were working on a range of curry pastes, and the curry pastes were already out in the market, and we wanted to step change the consumer appeal of these products. And we really wanted to get into how the consumer was feeling when they were making curries from these products and using the product. And we wanted to understand sort of really in the moment how it was for them to use this product as they were cooking, and also when they were eating it, who they were eating it with, what their reactions were. So how this was different was because we gave the products, we sent the consumers the product, and gave them a 2-week period where they could fill in completely free text and tell us about their experience. So it's completely open-ended, which removes the element of only being able to select a certain number of answers. We did have some questions that were closed questions, but we used those on top of the free flow. Now, what we did then with the information that was gathered was that was put into a chatbot, which was it was based on ChatGPT, and which meant that once all of the consumer information was put into the chatbot, as the product developer, I could then basically speak to the chatbot and ask it questions about the consumer testing. So, for example, I could say to the chatbot, what were the negative comments that were brought out in the consumer testing? And from all of the information that had been gathered, so everything that everybody had said, the chatbot could then summarize and give me the top 3 negative points or the top 3 positive points. And then I could delve a bit deeper and ask it some more questions. And if there wasn't the information available, it would say, I don't have the information for this, but does this answer your question, and give me other options. Now, this kind of blew my mind as a product developer, because there were 2 things. The level of detail that it was able to give me was, completely different to my experiences before of using market research in a sort of closed environment that was a sort of one-off session that was valuable, but once you leave, you only got your notes to go on and the report that you come back with. Whereas this, that raw data and those consumers' initial responses that were given were fresh on the chatbot the whole time I was doing the product development. And we actually ran this over 3 courses of samples. So, and each time the information was updated. So I could ask it, by comparison, was sample B that we sent 2 weeks later more successful? And it would take all of the information, understand all of the information, and tell us either yes or no, and the key points of which worked better and why. So it was a really, really powerful tool. And actually really nice to be able to keep going back and saying, I'm thinking of increasing the heat in this next round. What do you think, considering the results from the last round? So you could ask it questions like that with hindsight, and it could tell you, actually, 14 people out of the 60 thought that it was too hot. Maybe you could try doing something else. So you can actually have like a conversation with utilizing all of the information from the consumer research. So and that's why I've put here that it's analysis beyond our brains, because even with the, having lots and lots of people working on the data for something like that, it still wouldn't give you that level of insight that you can get from using a chatbot. You do have to bear in mind any biases that were going in and understanding the consumers that were being used. But even so, it's still incredibly powerful, and I found it really, really useful as product development. So, sorry, these are the watch outs. So it's understanding the accuracy. And I really believe that AI isn't going to replace people, and we're all going to lose our job, but it's understanding how we utilize AI and how we can do things better in our day-to-day to make us more efficient. And that's how I always try and use AI. Like, how can AI help me be more efficient, but always watching out for those watch outs. Oh, sorry, I'm going the wrong way. So I just also wanted to touch quickly on some really exciting things that I've seen that are coming up in the food industry. And one of them is this company called Black Bear. So this is actually a way of, if it comes into the industry, it's a way of creating a digital use by date, and you wouldn't need to have printed use by dates on the product. And they have utilized AI to be able to do this. So what they're doing is they've taken lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of data points to create and fed this into a, I don't know the correct terminology, but I assume like a machine learning. And they're their software then tracks the gases that are released in packs, and so it can see shelf life. So this over here is on their Instagram, and it shows the spoilage in real time in a pack of chicken. In the future, when you don't have a use by date printed, you would scan your phone onto the label, and it then uses all the data that's been collected to understand where that product is in its shelf life and how fresh it is. So it is a huge step forward in ability to manage waste in supermarkets. And I was really excited about this when I heard about it, because I've also done some work on sustainability and the enormous issue of waste. And this type of thing could completely revolutionize. And without AI, this type of business, even though you could have that information with the gases, but without AI interpreting the data and being able to predict, it wouldn't work in the same way. So that was one that I was incredibly excited about. Another thing that I thought would be really useful if you're interested in this area is Leeds University. Professor Nick Watson at Leeds University is a professor in AI food production, and they're doing some incredible things that will drastically change the way that products are developed. And this particular AI optimized fermentation for sustainable protein production from food waste they're looking at speeding up the process that you can identify raw materials and waste streams, so that because utilizing ingredients from waste streams can be incredibly costly, which is a barrier for a lot of people. So what they're trying to do is break down those barriers by speeding up the process, because if they can learn the different parameters, then you can utilize AI to say, what is the best way to predict us using this in a waste stream, and what are the best ways of the fermentation to do it. So again, it's and this goes back to what Sarah was saying about the data and trusting the data. And I found, I listened to one of his lectures, and it was really incredible, and gives a real insight into how AI will and can be utilized in the food industry going forward to make us so much more efficient. And from a sustainability perspective, it's incredible. And I think there are some huge things for the industry to look out for that can be done to help us on the sort of sustainability mission. So thank you very much. I hope I felt like a bit of a whistle-stop tour, finished dead on 5 o'clock. I hope it was useful. I've put my podcast website up here, and also Grounded Research, who I did the market research using AI on. And I've put my website there, which is very new, so probably hasn't launched. So don't look at it yet, because it won't load. But you can look at me. You can find me on the O Foods Sake website, and I'm on LinkedIn as well.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So that's us at 5 o'clock. So I've just very quickly got a couple of slides I'm going to share, and then we'll finish the webinar. So I'll very quickly just do that, just to let you know about some of the upcoming stuff that's happening. So just to let you know, if you're interested, we have a bespoke one-to-one support that's coming up as part of the TechHUB Networks project. So this is where businesses can apply for intensive one-to-one support from a food and drink expert to help you to overcome a specific challenge in your business. So that gets you 3 days of support from an expert to work with you. If it's not from SEC Consulting, then we will subcontract that out and really find the expert that can work with you. Previously, we've had lots of projects on things like packaging design, labeling, health and safety, factory layout, new product development, business planning, e-commerce, branding and marketing, raw material processing. So lots of various different areas. So if you are interested in applying for one-to-one support, please let me know by email. That's my email address there, and we can set you up with the application form. The deadline for the next round of applications is 4 p.m. on Friday, the 24th of January next year. So please do let me know if you're interested in applying. And if maybe it's AI you might be interested in, then we can try and find an expert to help you look at that. We're going to be doing another webinar. It's called On Digitalization, and talking about the TechHUB Technology Advice Service. So that'll take place on the 29th of January next year as well. And we'll deliver that in partnership with Intelligence Consulting, who are delivering that strand for the Tech Hub. And that webinar will include overview of what digital is, the role of digital in food and drink industry, the benefits of going digital, some case studies and industry speakers, and then introduction to that Tech Hub technology advice service in case you're interested in taking advantage of that support. Just also finally say that, as mentioned before, we have our podcast as well, which is called Food and Drink Tech Hub podcast with Food and Drink Business Bites. It's available to listen and download in all your usual methods. We've got 10 episodes that are now that are available to listen to, and so definitely encourage you to listen to them if you can. They're very good. Host, my colleague Kerry, is the host and talks a lot of interesting businesses, a lot of interesting people in the Highlands in the food and drink sector, and they can talk about their successes and how the Tech Hub project has supported them. And the 11th episode is going to be released quite soon, and that's on the topic of market insights. So if you're interested in that, please use the QR code there, and you can listen to them. And also we have a feedback form, so we'd be delighted if you can scan that and give us some thoughts on how you thought the webinar was today. And give us any ideas of any future webinars you'd like us to do. So that is us finished for today. Apologies, a couple of minutes over. Just leaves me really to thank our speakers. So that was Matthew, Sarah, and Lucy, and Claire from High. I thought it was a really good webinar today, and really interesting to see all the different applications of AI, and hopefully that was give you an understanding of how you can use it yourselves in your own businesses. Thank you yourself for joining us today. I hope you found it interesting. I'll be sending out email in the next couple of days with a recording of the webinar and also with the feedback form as well. If you can complete that, that would be fantastic, and to give us some feedback on where we should be going next or how you thought the webinar went. So just to say thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your evening. So thank you and goodbye.
Thanks, Alistair. Bye.